Thank you, Aaron. Now, I want everyone to continue that round of applause for Aaron, for Jennifer, for the amazing team and volunteers, for pulling all of this together and giving you this outstanding event. You have no idea how much work comes into putting together an event that goes so flawlessly. So please take time afterwards to thank them. This is all because of them. And make sure you fill out your evaluations. That's how this gets better and better every year. This is how we can expand the tracks and the information. Tell them what you want so that they can bring that to you. So thank you so much for sticking around a little bit in between the massive learning and our drinks and networking in a little bit. Now, I would assume everybody here has had a great day, right? Tired, but a great day? Awesome day? Has everyone at least learned one amazing thing that they hope to take home and use? Everybody? Okay, and I know that you're filled with information and this is only day one and you're like, how can I cram more in? So I'm gonna help you do that. So quickly, stand up for just a minute. It'll only take a minute. And I want you to kind of shake a little bit and kind of bounce in place so that all that knowledge settles down a little bit and makes a little bit more room. So make some more room, make some more room. Okay, we got it. You ready? Fantastic. You can sit down now. Unless you need. If you need to jump up and make more space, then go ahead and jump and make more space as we go along. So when we think about the best, what comes to mind? What comes to mind when you think about the best? Who jump in and share? Again? Number one. Who's number one? Who's the best? The Cubs. Woohoo! All right. Now, were the Cubs number one? Were the Cubs the best for the last 100 years? Some might say so, but they built on their success until finally everything came together. What are some other companies we think of that are the best? Okay, keep shouting them out. Keep shouting them out. Okay. Microsoft. Okay, great. Who are some of the people you think are the best? I heard of me. All right. Good job. You're already there. Head to the bar. No. What are some other people that are the best? BAs are the best. Other people that are the best. Other people, if you had to say who's the best, who are some names that you would expect to come to mind? Mom, Dad. Okay. So when we think about companies that are the best, Apple always comes to mind. It's impossible. But look back at the product history of Apple devices. They were the best, but look how vastly different the devices are now than they were before. And they've never been the only device that does what an Apple product does, are they? They started as a music player, and how many other music players were out there? How many phones, how many tablets, how many devices compete? But what they were the best at is they found a few key things, and they did them better than anybody else. And that made them stand out. They didn't have to do everything better. They didn't have to be the best in every category, but they were best in enough categories that mattered, that they provided value, and became the best in our hearts and minds. And when we talk about some of the people that are the best, you know, a lot of times you might think of celebrities or famous people with accomplishments or people in our personal lives or an awesome BA up front who's the best one here as well. And I like to think of, one of the people that I think of the best is Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was actually known, she's an actress from Hollywood, but when she was in Austria, she starred in a film called Ecstasy in the year 1933, which was the first nude scene ever in a movie. And that alone might kind of set her apart as just a factoid or an interesting question on Jeopardy. But why I think she's the best is because of what she invented. She invented spread spectrum radar. She was at a dinner party with a number of people right around World War I, and they were talking about how easy it was to jam torpedoes so they'd go off target. On a napkin, she sketched out information that she had learned through her life and from her first husband, and ended up inventing frequency hopping, which was later used and patented to completely revolutionize the way our military uses radar. And everyone here who has a cell phone that does network, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth uses her patent on a napkin at dinner. And it wasn't that she built something that wasn't based on other people's knowledge, But she had a unique perspective, a unique way of looking at things, and she pulled it together into something new, into something that was valuable, and that's what sets her apart. So today, I want to take this hour with you and quoting all that jazz. I don't know that I can make you great. I don't even know that I can make you good. But paraphrasing this, if you take any of the ideas I'm sharing, if you take the ideas you're getting at the conference, if you really try, you can become better. And that's what we're looking for. And out of the better will eventually become the best. And some of you may already be in the best, but there's just like Apple. Think about the Apple devices. The best now isn't the best tomorrow, so we have to continue to grow and develop new levels of mastery. To help illustrate that, I want everybody, they've got their notebooks out or right on the tablecloth, just kidding about the tablecloth. I want you to quickly sign your name. And then right below it or to the side of it, I want you to scribble your name again. And then do it one more time. When you look at your signature, this is something that you've been working on and learning how to do since kindergarten, maybe even earlier. When you look at your signature, do all three of them match? Are all three of them perfect? If we were here 200 years from now and somebody else was doing this presentation, is it your signature that would be up on this slide? So think about something that's that much a part of our everyday life, that we work on, that we use, but it's not the best. It might be for some of us. We might be happy with it. And does it matter? Does it matter whether or not that's something that's our hallmark? Does it matter if we're the one that has a John Hancock or not? If we're in the medical profession, it probably would hurt us. Now, I need some help from our golf players out there. So thinking about who's the best at golf, I want anybody who feels that they're in the top 5% to stand up. Do we have anybody who's in the top 5%? Rats, I was hoping I'd get at least one. How about in the top 25%? Nobody? Miniature golf, I'll count miniature golf. Top 25%. We got one, awesome. Hey, stay standing up. Okay, top 50%. The camera's only pointing at me. Nobody else will know. I got a second one. So out of this entire audience, I only have 2 people in the top 50% of golf? That's impossible. Anybody who has played golf, stand up. Anybody who plays. Holy cow, that's amazing. Well over half the audience. Now stay standing just for a minute. Before, when I asked how you rated yourself, none of you stood. I had to go to 25% and 50% just to find 2 people, but over half the audience from eyeballing it right now is standing. And that's because we have a natural bias to compare ourselves against the wrong data set. You can sit down. So out of all those people standing, if you look at the population of North America and the number of people who play golf, everybody standing is already in the top 6%. You didn't know that, did you? Isn't that exciting? You didn't even know you had this secret power. And you may be saying, Hans, that is utterly ridiculous. It is not fair to compare myself to people that don't play. I can only judge myself against people that are peers. But why? How many people in the world, in North America, in your city, can do what you can do? Even on an average day doing average work, who else could do that? How many people could walk in your shoes and do the same amount of work? You are already unique and exceptional and need to realize that and embrace that. But what we tend to do is we tend to compare ourselves to a smaller group. So what we'll do is we'll say, I think I rank about here, so let me look at everybody who is more senior to me, has a higher job title, has more direct reports, and now I'm at the bottom. So I've eliminated 80, 90% of the people, and I'm only comparing myself to the people that are better. And it's okay to look at who's better when you're seeing what you want to achieve. What are some of the behaviors that you want to model? Who do you want to learn from? But you need to also be more realistic, because if you sell yourself short, then you're not going to be able to do what you love as often, and it's going to limit your career. So what I want to do is help you exploit your uniqueness. I want to help you find the thing that makes you you special, that even people in this room among peers can't necessarily do. And to find that, marketing is the exploitation of your uniqueness. So really, it's communicating to other people, demonstrating to others, being known for what it is you do. So we have an entire sea of penguins out there, even if we look within our own roles or companies. How do we get recognized as the person who stands out from that crowd? The person who has that unique perspective, that unique value. And that's what I want to help you enhance, discover here today. So when we look at that, it's very easy to confuse experience and duration with value. So think about the people you work with. How many of them have 15 years of real experience? Or do they have the same experience 15 times? If I have pulled the same lever in a factory for 15 years, it doesn't matter which lever I'm pulling, all I've gotten is better, faster, and more reliable at pulling the same lever. I have not developed a new area of mastery. What I want each of you to do is to look at your careers, look at your path, and find those skills, those areas, those domains that you've added to generate truly 15 years of experience that you can draw from that sets you apart. And don't get trapped into being average and doing the same thing year after year after year. To illustrate that, I want to share a story about Rosie Russell. Rosie Russell was an amazing BA on my team. And every time I'd introduce her to somebody, I'd tell them, this is the greatest process-focused BA you will probably ever work with in your life. Nobody else in the entire enterprise can take complicated business processes, insane business rules, idiotic decisions, and map them out to figure out why things are or aren't working. And map them out in different ways so that we can understand them. We can figure out what can change, what needs to change, what can't change. And Rosie kind of got on my case one day and said, listen, you're selling me short. I'm like, I thought I was bragging about you. What's going on? She said, but I can write requirements documents. I can write use cases. I can facilitate meetings. I can do user stories. I know Agile. I know Waterfall. I know all these things. And I asked her about that. I said, okay, but look at just our team. Actually, look at our entire BA practice. Who else can do all of those things? She thought about it, and she's like, well, pretty much everybody. I was like, yeah, because all of our BAs can do all of the base things, at least average well. But name one person in this organization who can map out processes as well as you can. Name one person who could have gone into the last project that you had and could have been successful at what you did and actually delivered the value and the understanding. And there wasn't anybody. So for her, it was coming to understand not that she had to sell herself as an average person, but if she could sell herself where she could be exceptional, she would have exceptional results. And that's what you need to find, is those superpowers that you have, those things that you recognize that other people might not. We've all had inspirational moments in our life, whether it's a person, whether it's an event, but something that really changed and shaped how we thought of things and what our perspective was. And for me, one of those moments was Dr. Simmons when I was pursuing a master's in education at the University of Georgia. And she started off our semester and said, you're going to be graded on, and you're going to have to answer only one question. It is all we're going to work on this semester. Why do you want to teach? And so we're all excited. We get an A. It's going to be fun. I mean, who couldn't just answer that question? I mean, we're in college. We're studying this. This is easy. And then she went on. She said, so we all know that you want to teach because you're here. We know what you want to teach because you've picked science, but why? Why did you pick science? Why are you devoting your life, your energy to teaching? It's not because you care about science or love science. Somewhere deep inside, there is a core. We each have a mission statement, a core value that all of our life revolves around. And we may or may not even realize it. The closer we come to realizing what that value is, the more we'll understand why we make certain decisions, why we do things a certain way, why we fill our lives with certain people. We've got to figure out what our personal mission statement is so that we can direct the rest of our life. And for me, this was one of those moments where I finally had to question what it was that I wanted to accomplish in life. And since then, it's shaped and it's gotten more clarity, but I've really come to understand that, which has been great. And I think Michelangelo said it much better than I could have. So clearly, when asked, how is it that you can make such beautiful statues? And he responded with a little bit of a confused look on his face, like, I saw the angel inside the marble, and I kept carving until I set it free. That angel is your mission, is your purpose, is the core value that your life centers around. And for a lot of us, it is surrounded by a lot of rock. And we need to chip it away, and we need to find it. Because that angel, that value exists inside each one of us. So it's there, we just need to free it. And I want to share some tools and techniques that I hope will help you free the angel inside of you. And it's a metaphorical angel. I hope nobody finds a true angel, in which case you're going to be on some celebrity talk show. So how do we develop our strengths? We saw from Greg this morning, and he did an amazing job, so I'm going to just not spend too much time here, talking about how change feels. Change can be terrifying. When we look at everything we're going to do, everything we might want to change, and realize maybe how far from our goals, it can be very nerve-wracking. Nobody likes to admit what they are or what they're doing isn't great or isn't perfect, so you have to step outside of your comfort zone. But it's worth the journey. When we look at it holistically, it can be too much to tackle. If you know where you want to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, and you say, how am I going to get there? It can be daunting. Instead, I want you to think about a slogan that comes out of the environmental movement. People who are dedicated to the environmental movement truly want to save planet Earth from pollution, from destruction, from everything. But they've realized that they can't do it. They can't do it alone. They can't do it completely. They're not going to be the one on their own or even with a team who's going to be able to make that big of a difference. It's more than one person can solve, more than one team can solve. But if you know what your goal is, if you know what your mission is, you can think about it globally, but act locally. Think about the changes that you could make that will get you on that path, that will keep you going. So it could be as simple as, instead of stepping over that piece of paper you saw on the floor, pick it up and throw it away. You have now made the world a better place, and it took almost no effort. Fill your lives with those almost no effort moments that keep you on the path towards your mission. When you're on that path, it can be really hard to decide what you want to try and structure. What is it you want to change? Do I fix the gaps? Do I fix those things that are missing? Or do I come over here and do I really enhance my strengths? When you look at companies that enhance their strengths outperform companies that focus on repairing defects time and time again. But there's a catch to that. And that's the first point. You have to eliminate any career-limiting constraints in your life. If you have difficulty talking to groups, presenting, having conversations with C-suite executives, you need to get over that. You need to learn a way around it. That is career limiting. You could still have a happy career. There's amazing things you might still be able to do, but that will limit your trajectory, both in how far you can go and how fast you'll get there. Once you've eliminated, or as you're eliminating some of the career-limiting decisions, enhance your superpowers. What are those things that make you unique, make you special, that you can then bring forward, that you can share with others? Because the more people know about your superpower, the more chances you'll get to use it. And finally, are there areas where you can develop a competitive advantage? If you have not ingrained yourself in understanding how social media works, and digital technologies, and mobile technologies, and mobile communications, and point of presence, you're going to be left behind. These are what's going to happen and drive the next 5, 10 years, who knows, in all of our business. So we need to learn how to do those things. To step out of our comfort zone is to lead and is to take risks. You can't lead without taking risks. And I'm not talking about management. Management's easy. If you want to be a manager, all you have to do is make sure the right things get done on time. That's it. You can have a static organization with management that's just making sure that the right things get done on time, and you will be fine. But to lead, to really hit those value moments, you've got to take risks and you've got to step outside your comfort zone. I can't tell you how many times some of my best success stories, some of my greatest case studies were times where I did something without authorization, without permission, without funding, because it needed to get done. And sometimes it took years of perseverance and failures and tests. Our entire innovation team was based on the premise that if you can just free people up, get them to take that risk, give them a little bit of protection, they can do amazing things. And that's what we found. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that tomorrow in tomorrow's session. To help you decide which opportunities to go after, it's often easier if we have a model or something that we can follow, and something that's easier to remember. And for us, the model we used for the organization was a rope, a tank, and a door. So a rope are those really exciting opportunities, those really glitzy things where you really want to do them, they look like fun, but there's no momentum. There's nothing that's going to carry them forward. There's not the interest. So it's like you're pushing on a rope, pushing on a string, and you keep pushing, and it just doesn't go anywhere. The opposite of that is pushing on a tank. And especially think about if you work in a highly regulated business. How hard? If we got everybody in this room together and started pushing on a tank, how far could we get it to go? An inch, 2 inches at most? It would be almost impossible because all of the inertia is built up against us. You want to avoid ropes and tanks whenever you can. Instead, I want you to look for swinging doors. A swinging door is an opportunity when you pull, there is somebody else pushing on the other side. So you have help. There's something or someone, some sort of a demand that will help you get that door open. And once the door is open, it tends to stay open. So find the open doors in your life. Avoid the ropes and the tanks. I want to tell you, so to find out and get support in our opportunities, it's useful to have mentors or coaches. So a mentor, we've got a whole room full of mentors. A mentor is somebody that can share knowledge, insight, or feedback so that we're better afterwards. Every single person in this room has a unique perspective, a superpower or value that you could share with anybody else, and they would derive value. So you could be a mentor to anybody in this room, and likewise, they could be a mentor to you. There's an old proverb that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That is the art of what a mentor is. A mentor could be a book, a TV show, an event, a person, but the mentors are those little life lessons that if we hear them, make us better. A coach is a more structured version of a mentor. So with a coach, they're actually working on us in a more structured format on our goals, on our opportunities. They're providing feedback. Maybe they're even laying out and helping us lay out a structured plan. They're very valuable, and I encourage everybody beyond your manager to look for a coach. Look for somebody that can help guide your career path. The final one, I think, is more important than both of those, and it's a work spouse. So anybody who's been in a long-term relationship or a marriage kind of knows what I'm saying by spouse. It is your lifelong partner who you share often your deepest fears, your greatest success, your biggest problems. But the problem is using them as a work spouse is they are biased. They have a vested interest in your success and happiness, which means they're going to lie to you. They're not going to tell you what you need to hear when you need to hear it. And you don't want to necessarily burden them with all of the problems of work. And maybe they don't even have the context. Instead, you need to find a work spouse. Somebody that can fill that relationship about work, about your personal life, wherever you feel comfortable, and it becomes a deep friendship that is mutually beneficial. And that's what differentiates it between a coach. If it's not mutual, if it is not equal, it is not a viable relationship. And that's the same thing with our marriage. If you do not have equality and trust in your marriage, it will fail. The same thing is true with a work spouse. So John was a work spouse that I met through friends, never ever thought we would become that close, and never realized what an important role he'd play in my life. John was probably one of the most opposite people I could have looked for. I was born in Minneapolis. I moved to Atlanta, grew up in the city, have followed an academic track or an IT track most of my life. John is a redneck from LA. And for those of you that don't know, that's Lower Alabama. He's got an associate's degree. He spent most of his career managing restaurants. He later started managing a warehouse and completely revamping their staff and their process and their shipping. John is the best operational manager and people manager I have ever met. We both have a process focus, so we have enough common ground to talk, but he had an insane ability to create structures where people could be successful and people could be held accountable. I didn't realize how important a work spouse was. I didn't even know what a work spouse was until quite a while into our friendship. And I went through a horribly dark period, especially at work. It was the toughest career year I think I've ever had. The strains, the constraints, the problems at work were absolutely overwhelming. And I didn't realize how much I was bottling up inside. I didn't realize how much any of these problems that I used to solve were now becoming a burden, and I was becoming horribly depressed because of it. Until finally one night while watching TV, I'm sitting in a chair in a living room, and I had a complete and total emotional breakdown. Absolutely was crying, spewing all of the problems, all of my frustrations, all of my fears, everything to my poor wife, who was like, deer in headlights, oh my God, what do I do? And it was at that moment when I realized that all those things that I thought I could handle on my own, I couldn't. I had been carrying the burden for that last year without realizing it, with little help, almost no assistance. And unfortunately, that was because the previous summer, my friend John had gone into the hospital with pneumonia. They discovered it was actually stage 4 lung cancer, and within 3 months, he was dead. And I hate to bring the audience down about that, but I didn't realize what a profound impact he had had on my life and how much he was helping me day in and day out. We can't carry the burden alone. There's too much for any of us, and we weren't meant to. Humans by nature are tribal. We rely on each other. I encourage you to find the work spouses and foster those relationships and build them openly and honestly, and build a network of spouses if you can. Have a work spouse harem, or the harem, whatever the guy version of it, whichever way you want to go. Mix it up, have some fun, put some diversity into it. But it'll be an amazing assistance as you move through your career. To help you out on your path, there's a few tools, a few tricks that I've learned throughout the years that I want to share with you. And I hope that some of these will resonate with you. They're things that you can apply immediately. If you need a reference, this deck will be available from the conference website to download, and it's available immediately on my website, ekmanguides.com. So you can download this, and I'm always available to answer questions or help if I can. The first thing is, all successful people have a dashboard. They have some indicator that shows them what their goal is and are they on track. And a lot of people may have multiple dashboards. Think about trying to drive without a dashboard. Think about flying home without the pilot having a dashboard. It would be terrifying. We have them at work. We have them for projects. Why don't we have them for our lives? Why don't we create a dashboard to know, are we on track? When I first set out and started creating a dashboard and said, I wrote down, like they say, where will you be in 10 years? Where will you be in 5 years? What will have to happen to get you there? And I had realized I had spent close to 10 years not making a lot of progress towards my 5-year goal, and I needed to make a change. And because of that dashboard, I decided that a very important part of my life was an information portal I was running. I had to give up. It was awesome, but I needed to do it or my other goal. There wasn't time to do both. And I had to give up and walk away from one dream because the other dream being here with you was bigger and better. So I want to do a quick exercise. So I want you to quickly divide up in pairs at your table. If you find an odd person, then turn around and pair up. Or if you want, you can try it a 3-person, but since it's a 2-person activity, it may blow up on you. And I want the person with the longer hair to argue that you should work from home, that you should be able to work from wherever you want. Remote working is the way to go. I want the person with the shorter hair to argue that teams must collaborate and co-locate. So we're going to take about 2 minutes here, and I want you, based on your hair length, to argue each position. Ready? Go. Okay, clap 3 times if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Works for kindergartners, it almost works for adults. Okay, so how many people with long hair convinced those rule-making, joy-killing bureaucrats that we need to be able to work from any location, a coffee house, wherever we want to work? How many people convinced their partner, think they convinced their partner? Couple people, okay. How many people with shorter hair convinced those silly, free-loving, coffee-drinking, poetry-loving hippies that we need to be in the office, we need to collaborate, because Agile works by collaborating together? How many people think they won? Okay, not unexpected. How many people ended up where you came to a consensus that there was an advantage to both? And that's the problem with BAs. You're naturally problem solvers, so you all fail. Because what you experienced is a natural tendency, and our practice gets around that more than others. But that's because we tend to set the lights on a timer, so this is going to get fun in a second. Focus on the slides. We tend to, button number 1, we tend to listen to respond. We don't listen to understand. If you have ever been in a fight with your partner, with your date, with your spouse, you know how valid this is. Because the minute they start nagging, you're immediately thinking how you're going to respond and prove them wrong. Because you're right. You have a point to get across. And you've said the same thing 3 times in a row, and they're still arguing with you, saying something totally unrelated. It took me several years into my marriage when I finally decided to start listening. And I realized if I was saying something and arguing one point, and she was vehemently arguing another point, and we weren't coming together, maybe we were arguing about 2 different things. So the challenge we have, especially at work, is getting people to listen to understand. Finding out, are we talking about the same thing? Are we talking about different aspects? Are we just talking to win, or are we talking to solve? And we do that better than most, as illustrated by most of the people here ended up coming to consensus when I clearly told you to argue, because we do it naturally. But we need to teach other people how to do this naturally as well. The next item in our toolbox is a technique called feel, felt, found. And it goes like this. Aaron, I really understand that you're nervous about this system replacement. We're going to totally redo the entire conference registration system. It's going to be all new. It's going to be a whole new set of tools. Everything's going to change. And I know that the last time we tried to do this, it didn't go that well. So I know that you're nervous. But let me tell you about Amy. Amy, when she replaced the entire HR system, felt the exact same way. She was afraid that all of her people, the people she counted on, weren't going to be able to do their jobs. They weren't going to be able to serve their internal customers. And this is people's health care. This is their promotions. This is their paychecks. We can't mess this up. But what Amy found was, when we worked together and focused in on what her team needed to do their jobs, what they needed to be successful, we were able to launch a system that was far more effective than the old one. And I think that we'll be able to get the same thing here, that if we partner and work together, we'll be able to get the same result in the new system by focusing in on what matters and what it is people are trying to do. So it's an easy 3-step process. Empathize with their pain points. Acknowledge that change isn't easy. Felt, tell a story when someone else has shared a similar feeling. And found, correlate the two stories so that the success from one will imply success or drive towards the approach that you're looking for in the other. And you'll find that a lot of those combative stakeholders or diverse teams will end up coming closer together because of this. There's an outstanding quote that pops up several times in Atlas Shrugged. Contradictions do not exist. Wherever you think you are facing a contradiction, check your premises. You will find that one of them is wrong. It seems easy, it seems self-evident, but we violate this rule every day because we do believe, we even write requirements that enforce contradictions at work because we haven't solved them well enough. So I want to share one of them that I refer to the contradiction or the double standard of the no clutter zone. We have a firm rule in our house set by my wife that there is no clutter allowed in a living space. So I want you to take a look at these two pictures and decide, is it the picture on top, which is the coffee table at the end of the couch in our family room, or is there clutter in the bottom picture, which is a high top table in between our sunroom and our kitchen? How many people think that the top picture is a violation of the no clutter rule? Okay, about a third. How many people feel that the second picture is a violation of the clutter rule? All right, I seem to get a lot more hands. How many people think both pictures violate the clutter rule? Okay, naturally we're trying to go with the answer we think is right, or actually believe it. So everybody that raised your hand first that said only the top picture is clutter, you are correct. Everybody else that raised their hand that both were clutter or the bottom one, you were with me the first 5 to 8 years of my marriage and I didn't understand the rule. And I didn't understand where my premises were wrong. I thought clutter was clutter and the degree of clutter was the degree of violation. I didn't understand that the premise was clutter is an object left out on a common space that should be put away or is not needed. So if I look at the top picture in my wife's view, the surround sound speaker and the lamp have a place and can be left out. They're used, it's okay, you really can't put a speaker away and just pull it out when you're watching TV. The rest of the items, the computer speakers, the little filing drawer with all the stuff I like, my tissue, my books, the phone because she doesn't use a phone. She doesn't care about the home phone. This is all clutter. These are all needless items that do not need to exist in her world for her to be happy, and therefore they need to go away. But why doesn't she violate the bottom rule with her mess on the table? Because that's all of her bags, all of her stuff dumped after going away for a weekend volleyball tournament. But it's not clutter. It exists there for a purpose. The purpose is it needs to be unloaded and put away, or stacked, or whatever, and it is there to wait until she gets time to put it away. So it's not clutter because its purpose is to stay there until it gets put away. I had a lot of trouble understanding where my premises and why I was wrong all of those years. So think about that. Think about the clutter rule when you're at work and you see people arguing and you seem to have a contradiction or a double standard. It means that one of your premises is wrong and you need to find out what it is because once you solve it, you'll be a lot happier. And then finally, you can get sign off on your document. I want to share 3 tips, and I have to give direct credit to Dr. Dusty Rhodes, longtime friend, part-time work spouse for me. He has taught me more about management and marketing and branding than I ever thought I could know. I'm teaching him how to be the smartest old guy in technology since he's 78 now. He has his latest book is How to Use Management Techniques to turn ADD into an asset. It's probably the best dollar if you get a chance you'll ever spend on Amazon. It's available as a Kindle book. But these are 3 tips that have really changed my life that I've learned from Dusty. The first one is, if you expect, inspect. Really simple, really easy to remember. If you expect, inspect. And to illustrate that, let me tell you a story about Van Halen. Anybody know about the infamous story of Van Halen and the M&Ms? All right, don't spoil it for the rest of us. Van Halen, one of the best rock bands of all time, when they were touring, were considered a prima donna, highly demanding, unrealistic band when it came to their venues. They had one of the largest binder-filled contracts ever of exactly how their setup should be. It included such statements down at the bottom as M&Ms, warning, absolutely no brown ones. They demanded that each venue pick all the brown M&Ms out before they were put. And I see some people shaking their hands going, oh my word, they are prima donnas. When asked in an interview about how ridiculous this was, they had a really simple answer. Their fans paid a lot of money to come and see a perfect show. There are thousands and thousands of things that can go wrong in a show, in a setup, that could ruin that experience for their fans. It could take 8 hours or more for them to check everything and make sure their show was perfect so that their fans could get that experience. Instead, they developed the M&M test to inspect. All they did is walk into the dressing room. If they saw brown M&Ms, they knew that venue had not thoroughly read the contract, and they needed to spend the next 8 hours investigating everything. If the M&Ms were gone, they knew that they had read down to that detail, and probably everything was perfect. They still spot inspected the trouble areas. They still did some testing, but now they could do it in an hour instead of 8 hours. So if you expect, you have to inspect. The next one, and we've all probably seen this, but how many of us are really following it? I am guilty of making task lists myself. Task lists don't work very well. If you're using task lists to generate your work and to manage and prioritize, you only have a 40 to 60% chance of completing that work. Instead, put the important task items onto your calendar. Block out times to do that work. Block out times to catch up or do email. This is not time that can be filled with meetings. This has to be the time to do your work. This is why you're up late at night doing all of these things, because you've let someone fill your calendar with meetings instead of the work that is often more valuable. If you can do this, if you can block out your time, you will be 80% more likely to complete those items. So next, another real simple one to remember. Stop starting and start finishing. It's really hard to do. This is one of my mom's favorite ones now, because she was the queen of ADD house organization, which is I walk into one room and I start a project, and I pick up something that doesn't belong in that room, and I go into the other room. Now that I'm in the other room, I put this down and I see something I need to do, so let me start doing that. But now I found something else and it reminded me of here, and now I need to run to the bathroom. Oh, I'm in the bathroom, maybe I should clean the bathroom now, and nothing's getting done. Especially when we're super busy, there's an easy way to get around that. When you're stressed, when you don't know what to do, look for items that you can start finishing and get off your list. Be done with them. The Ohio method, only handle it once, which was 4 fingers, but only handle it once. Think about this and remember if you're paying off credit card debt. So the credit counseling used to advise people, if you were suffering from credit card debt, the best way of getting away from it was to list all of your credit card debt in the order of highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. That way, every dollar you spent would be spent against the highest interest rate and would result in less of your money having to go to pay off your entire debt. Makes sense, doesn't it? Seems like it would work. Instead of paying a lot of money, a whole lot of money, you were paying a little bit less and getting the same job done. Unfortunately, you were 80% more successful if you did a different technique. If you ordered your debt from smallest debt to largest debt, you were 80% more likely to live debt-free. And the reason was kind of shocking, but it goes to a lot of our modern change models. If you get a quick win, if you have an immediate success, it feels good. On projects, when you have a quick win, it's the same thing. I have seen value, and now the big project, the globe, the think globally, act locally, now starts to happen in practice. And so I pay off one debt, and I feel good, and I've got momentum, and then I pay off the second debt. And then I pay off the next one. And by the time I get to those really, really, really big, ugly credit cards, I've paid off my debt successfully so many times, no matter how big it is, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much that 142% interest rate I signed up for is piling up, I know I can do it. And that works 80% of the time. So stop starting and look for things where you can start finishing. The next tip is that the early bird gets the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. When you're looking for opportunities, it's really easy to think, I need to do something that no one else has done. Or maybe I need to be a pioneer, or I need to invent something that's disruptive, or I need to go in a whole new area. You might have a great success doing that. You might be a market of one, and if you can do that, fabulous. But it takes a lot of energy, and it has an amazingly high risk. Instead, maybe you should look for opportunities where you could be a fast follower. Look for new trends, new areas, new skills, new development, where you could potentially be in a small and highly desired market that has been mostly proven enough that it's not you who has to convince people, but you can follow behind and ride on their glory and be some of the first people into that. For me, when the web first became visual and companies were trying to establish a web presence, I spent most of my time trying to educate companies why they even needed a website, what it was, why it was going to be useful, because no one believed it would turn into what it is today. It was wasted effort. And there was much better ways of approaching that. For those here, looking into business architecture. Business architecture now is where BAs were 10, 15 years ago. There's structure around it, there's a general understanding, but nobody's doing it right, nobody really knows what it is. So if you're on the forefront of business architecture, you're going to be in a unique value proposition very shortly here as the industry embraces it, and you can be one of the experts in that space. Now, I'm not allowed to assign reading to everybody in the world, but if I did, here are the 3 books that I believe everybody should read. The first one is by Seth Godin, and it's Linchpin. Linchpin is about how you are indispensable, how the linchpins in your organizations are the people who get things done, and how your superpower is your art. And as an art, it needs to be given freely and often to everybody. Sorry, oftenly is not a correct word. Switch is by Dan and Chip Heath. Switch is probably the best organizational and change book I have ever seen. It really takes a lot of the concepts you heard today from Greg, and you may have heard in some of your sessions, and it outlines how and why we have so much trouble with change, and why we have so much resistance to change, and why some things that attack change from one way fail or the other way fail, but it has to bring both together. The techniques that they share and the stories they share are easy to implement, and I've successfully implemented them in countless different opportunities, and they really do work. And you can end up referring to them as stories among people who have read this book and say, you know what, we need a glove moment. We need the organization to have a glove moment, which goes back to a story they share where they were trying to convince all the different factories and work areas that they needed to collectively buy gloves instead of independently. So they took every glove that somebody had bought, put the price tag on, threw it on a table, and did it as a roadshow. And showed everybody that some people were paying $5 for the same glove that someone else was paying $50 for. And by seeing a table full of gloves with different prices, they got the message through. If they had done that in a PowerPoint slide, they would have failed. Great book. The final one is by Robert A. Heinlein. Anyone familiar with Heinlein? Awesome. One of the grandfathers of science fiction, and probably the most insightful writer with socio and political views. A lot of the topics that he's written into his most famous books are things that are happening or about to happen. And he wrote them 50 years ago. Moon is a Harsh Mistress is usually the favorite among Heinlein fans and is an amazing story that will help you work through and consider what your social, political, or personal philosophies are. So I encourage you to read all of those. There's links when you download to the Amazon books, because it's easy. So let's pull it all together here. First, about anyone can do what we do 90% of the time. When we go through our day, we could probably job swap and do a fine job in about 90% of what each of us does. But it's that 10% of the day that makes all the difference in the world. And that's when you're using your superpower. That's when you step into the phone booth and change into your costume and you make a decision. You make a connection. You help set the path. You avoid a problem. Those are the golden moments. Those are the moments you need to focus on. You need to recognize. When they happen, you've got to capture them. It's critical that you recognize those. Often I've heard people say, well, I could be CEO. Why not pay me millions of dollars? There's nothing that they do that's special that I can't do. 90% of the time, you're absolutely right. They're sitting in the same boring meetings, getting the same reports and the same information. But the difference that makes a CEO successful and help them get to that level is the decisions they make, the team they put in place, how they hold that team accountable, and the direction that they set for the company. That sets the course for the success or failure of everybody downstream. Every decision at the top magnifies through the organization. Sometimes it magnifies and dies and doesn't make it to the people who matter. Other times it helps shift. Anybody could be CEO and run a company into the ground. But it takes an amazing leader to take appropriate risks. And we're each a CEO for our career, for our area, for the teams that we lead. We have that responsibility. There is an organization counting on us to steer the project, to steer the work, to solve the problems, because we're the ones who have the ability to do that. We've all read books or watched movies where a character, unfortunately, they've lost someone they care about. Something bad has happened. They've lost everything. And you hear them talking about everything that they would give up, everything that they would sacrifice just to get 5 more minutes, just to be able to go back and make a change. I was thinking about this about 10 years or so ago, and thinking about the things that were important to me in life and what would happen if they were gone. What would I do? How hard would I fight to bring them back? And it really finally dawned on me that I was an idiot. And that was because if I was willing to do so much when it was too late to try and recover, why wouldn't I put in half of that effort, any measure of that effort now, while I still have time? Why am I not taking the steps to bridge the gaps, to reach out to people, to strengthen the relationships, to shore up the things that I may need later? And I'm not saying this is a YOLO moment, where sacrifice everything, the world's going to end tomorrow, although some of us have feared that over the last week. It's not going to happen. This isn't a run out and knock everything off your bucket list. But are you working on your bucket list? We shouldn't wait till we're retired to work on our bucket list. I talked to someone earlier today, and they've already laid out the next 2 items on their bucket list that they're going to knock off potentially in the next 2 years. How exciting is that? So think about the things that are most important. Think about the things that are core to your life and most important. What are the steps you're taking to start making them happen today? It will involve sacrifice. It's a trade-off. For a lot of us, it means getting outside of our comfort zone and doing those things we keep putting off but we know matters. And I really don't know any better way of summing it up. For what I hope for each of you, what I expect from each of you, what I know is in each of you, other than I want you to become the person your dog thinks you are. That should be your goal in life. That is your milepost. When you become the person your dog thinks you are. Now, I'm not saying cats, because cats don't think much of any of us. But think about what your dog thinks you are and be that person. Now, I want you to help me fulfill a little bit of my mission and my purpose, and I want you to share a couple items. Was there anything here that resonated with you? Were there items that you think you could take forward and apply? I want you to share just a couple of them, and then Aaron's got a few closing comments, and then we'll get to the networking part, and I'll be available if anyone wants to chat after. So would anyone share some moment that resonated with you that you think you can take forward or apply? Yes?
Stopping and starting.
Stop starting and start finishing. Absolutely. Yep, I have that taped to my monitor. Thank you so much. You win. Yes? Absolutely. In our team, in the last team I was with, we had a saying which was, do not leave too much of you in the trunk of your car when you come into work. Think about all the things you're great at, all the things that are valuable, and how much of that are you leaving in your car and not doing at work because you think you can't or that's not what they want. They need it. Do it. Lead. Take the risk. I need one more person to share. Okay, we'll do 3. Go ahead.
Having a dashboard for your life so you know where how you're doing.
Life dashboard. Critical. Absolutely. Yes?
I like the organizational encourage.
Okay. Yep, pick up momentum. Start with the small wins and look for tasks that, especially as you're forming a new team, the more someone can work together and solve the easy things, then the harder ones become a lot better. If you think about anyone with sports or music, you don't start off doing complex plays or complex music. You start with simple things until you get the practice. The same thing should be true. And we had one more here, and then I'll turn it back over to Aaron. Yes?
Calendar item instead of essays.
Yeah. Absolutely, and don't be afraid to write covert titles on that if you want to hide it and make it look important. I mean, I'm not saying check email should be on your daily list, but prioritize daily tasks and address any outstanding concerns. Could be check email. Yes, ma'am.
I think I need to get a dog.
Absolutely, and with this and all of my presentations, they're available online. Absolutely no animals were harmed during the creation of this presentation, but I do encourage you to support your local pet rescue groups. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking with you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.